Welcome to After the Pull, the video series where I share all my thoughts and opinions on the rest of the comic books that I read for the current comic book week. Hey guys, I'm Mike Spiderslayer. Welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0. If you love daily comic book content and you like me helping you make decisions on what comic books to buy, guys, you came to the right place. Hit that subscribe button. Also, guys, if you want to check out my thoughts on the newest issue ones, check out the video series Worthy Ones. And between this series and that series, you got it all covered. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start this week's episode. You're now entering the speed round. Here you go, guys. Got rid of the squiggly lines and everything. This one goes to Absolute Power, Task Force 7, issue 6 or 7. Some of these books have been hit or miss. Some have been better than others. I've overall enjoyed them. I think issue 1 was my least favorite. Issue 6 of 7 is my second least favorite. There was nothing here that really added to the story. This takes place, I think, during or right after or right before Absolute Power issue 3, if I remember correctly, as you get to see the Amazo robot try to invade Themyscira, and we wind up getting to see them go after all of them, and it was this battle, and the artwork was just okay, but there was nothing here that was memorable, that really enhanced the Absolute Power storyline. So obviously I would say this is a pass. I wouldn't recommend this comic book. The next book is Jonny Quest, issue 2, done by Dynamite Entertainment. Issue 1 was entertaining. Issue 2 was also entertaining. It takes place right now in 2024, which is kind of cool. However, when it comes to Jonny Quest, it's a character that I never really got attached to when I was a kid, and when I'm reading this kind of gives me that same vibe of like the Fantastic Four on why I didn't like Reed Richards, because he seems like this know-it-all and it goes into constant, exposition dump about how smart he is and how these particles are going to work and how, it's just like, he's like over nerdy, and that's what I got in this comic book as well, where it takes away from the overall story. That's just in my eyes here. Not a horrible story, but I don't think I can continue this going forward, right? It's just not my cup of tea. All right, the next thing is Spider-Man Reign 2. This is issue 3. Let me tell you, the artwork from Kari Andrews in this book is absolutely phenomenal. There's a point in time where this book takes place, like right after issue 299 and in between Amazing Spider-Man 300, which I'm kind of baffled and confused on the whole storyline just in general. Just how somehow Mary Jane is part of the Venom symbiote. I'm just not getting this comic book, man. It just seems all over the place for me, and I feel like I'm totally missing something here. Maybe it's because I didn't read that first volume, but again, that artwork is so beautiful to look at. I love the characters. I love the way it's drawn, and obviously I'm going to continue to read it, but I just feel like I'm missing something. All right, the next book we're talking about is DC Vampires World War V. This is issue 2. I liked the first volume of this better so far than the second. There's not too much to where I'm like, oh, this is so great, until you got to the end of this comic book. So I'm going to stick with it, I think. And what was badass was the whole scene with Wonder Woman and Alfred here. They're like, Wonder Woman gets this upper hand and she's a vampire, and it's like she's about to kill Alfred, and then the next thing you wind up seeing is he becomes a particular superhero. And I was like, that's pretty badass. But from the beginning to that particular scene, it took forever to get to. So I'm really going to be on the fence to see if I'm going to continue reading DC vs. Vampires. I gotta really make the tough cuts here because we're getting to October and there is a ton of new stuff coming out. I'm not going to be able to read it all, and I'm not going to be able, honestly, to afford it all either. All right, the next book we're talking about is Venom War. This is Venom issue 37, Venom War tie-in. This book, listen, I don't like old man, was it Dylan in this comic, how he's got to do time travel to try to stop whatever's going on in his future. I'm just not a fan of that. We get to see him take on Mutant Man. We get to see Spider-Man take on Venom for a little bit. It's just not my cup of tea. I don't like how this is tying in the Venom War. Not at all. I just have not been a fan of the Venom series that much either. Okay, so the next book we're talking about is Blood Hunters issue 2. This book seemed okay in the first issue, but issue 2, it just got a lot worse. We wind up getting to see our Blood Hunters in the beginning of this issue go against Miles Morales. And in fact, it wasn't really all of them. It was just Elsa Bloodstone. And she kind of like leaves the team because they don't get along and stuff like that. You get to see more pointless fighting against the major bad guys from Blood Hunt and more fighting against vampires. I don't really know what the point of this comic is besides them fighting vampires. So I don't know. We'll see. I do like Hallows Eve. I like the way this book is drawn, but there's no real purpose to this book right now because the purpose was to cure Miles Morales and Miles like kind of left. So I don't know. We'll see. But the best book out of all of these books that I'm talking about right now is Moon Knight issue 9 or Vengeance of the Moon Knight issue 9. I'm struggling here, guys. I'm sorry. I'm a little sick like I talked about yesterday. And when it comes to this book, this is the conclusion of the run. And here we get to see Mark Spector winds up coming back. And he winds up having to go against the Shroud in this issue because Khonshu wants a life for his life. So since he was brought back to life, he has to kill somebody, and he figures it was the Shroud that impersonated him and caused all these problems to begin with. And the way this book ended was absolutely awesome. I'm not going to spoil that for you, but I would definitely recommend this book all day, especially if you've been reading this series from the start. It's a great conclusion to it. It ends so well. Space Ghost. This is issue 5, 32 pages for the price of $5. This book is written by David Pepose and the art is done by Jonathan Lau. The artwork continues to impress as I read this comic. These characters are just absolutely beautifully drawn. The coloring in this book is also really well done. Everything about it just like takes you away to a different world. I mean, this is awesome looking book, right? And so in this issue, we wind up reading about Space Ghost, who is taking on his arch nemesis, which is Zorak. And he is like this cult following type of creature that is trying to summon this thing called like Lorak, right? It's absolutely insane. And he has all these like locusts, and it's up to Space Ghost to stop this from happening. And just when you think all is lost, we wind up seeing a character that kind of disappeared off of this book for a little bit, kind of saved the day, right? But then there is a supporting cast member in this comic also that kind of did something to the point where they're thinking about no longer being part of the team. And it was kind of like really gut-wrenching, right? And I was like, oh man, that sucks. But obviously, if you're being a hero for the first time, you know, and you see things that you're not used to seeing, you know, this can weigh heavily on the heart. So when I read this comic book, I was like, dude, that's intense. Nowhere in my imagination would I have ever thought that Space Ghost would be as good as it is. This is probably Dynamite's one of their best comics on the shelves right now. Highly recommend it. I'm going to give this one an A. Really, really good comic book, guys. If you have not read it yet, you might have to read from issue 1 to get a little bit of understanding of where these characters are. But nevertheless, it's a awesome comic. The Amazing Spider-Man. This is issue 57. Legacy numbering here is 951. 32 pages for the price of $5. Written by Zeb Wells, and the art is done by John Romita Jr. Now, the artwork is what you can expect these days from John Romita Jr. Lots of close-ups, right? Not a lot of action in the comic books. This just seems to be the trend. The characters have very narrow faces in them. There's some pages in here where it's not bad, right? Where, I like Tombstone's face in this particular instance. He's kind of very dark and menacing. Spider-Man on the train looks pretty good, but it's not the greatest artwork, and it's not what you need in a Spider-Man comic book. You want something that has a lot of detail, lots of action, and it's just not making the grade these days when it comes to the art. Now, in this comic book, it felt like I read it within like 5 minutes. I was like, holy cow, this is it? Like, it says it's literally 32 pages, right? And I don't know, man. But what this story is about Tombstone, who went to prison in the last issue, and Spider-Man's talking to him, and he's like, you're going to be in here a long time, you're not getting out. And then while he's on that conversation with him, he winds up getting bailed out. And he winds up getting bailed out by the lawyer who he went out on the date with, which I thought was actually kind of hysterical, right? And now there's this race against time on what Tombstone is going to do next. Who is he going to take care of, right? And obviously the big thing is Janice, which is his daughter. And it was a tough situation for the White Rabbit in this issue as well. But at the end of the day, it's the one person that comes face to face with Janice is actually Tombstone himself, and you're kind of like, okay, we'll see where that goes. Well, how are they going to square off with each other, right? So I think when it comes to this comic book, I think Zeb Wells has written the Tombstone storyline the best overall. It would have been interesting to see if he didn't do any of the other stuff. Like, what would his Tombstone story arc be like, right? Instead of it being so drawn out, this entire run. Now, this book, like I said, probably read in like 5 minutes. And when you get to it, you're like, dang, we're at the mail already? And then you're like, okay, well, what's the backup story about? And it's just a preview for freaking Chasm. And this is a book that already came out. So you're already... you're like, really? This book came out like a month ago and I'm reading this. So I felt like in very many ways I was getting gypped. Even though I don't like backup stories, right? It's better than getting a preview for a book that came out last month. I mean, come on, guys. You're paying $5 for this book. So at the end of the day, I'm going to give this one a B-. I actually liked reading it. I just wish it wasn't so damn short. Uncanny X-Men, this is issue 2. This is a 28-page comic for the price of $5. Written by Gail Simone. The artwork here is done by Dave McQuez. I always love his artwork. It looks great. I love some good facial expressions in here. This Pegasus person by the name of Calico, I think she looks beautiful. And I think she's probably the most interesting out of all these new characters in there. We get the new villain in here as well that took over the X-Mansion. And, honestly, like, Uncanny X-Men does have some decent promise to it. It was just a very interesting way of our current X-Men, like when it comes to Rogue and Gambit and Wolverine, coming across these young kids, and they just start fighting them right from the start, thinking that they are threats, right? And that's what a lot of this issue was, until they kind of come to terms with each other to not fight with each other. You finally get Jubilee in the comic book, which she was absent from, and the whole reason with that was because she was dealing the situation at hand with Bloodhunt, so that's why she was late to the party here. And then at the end of the issue, you wind up getting a little bit of the villain, like I said, that's working for this Cornea character, Miss Ellis, who winds up capturing mutants and brings them to the X-Mansion, and the creature kind of looks like that. So what is that all about? I don't know. Honestly, when it came to this book, I felt it wasn't as strong as the first issue. I thought this one kind of was like almost meaningless, because it's like, yes, you get introduced to these characters, but instead of finding a way to work with these characters, they kind of started off fighting each other, and it wasted like a lot of time. I would have loved to see more about what these characters were about, and I get like maybe they fight so you can see their power sets and whatnot and make it a more interesting way to introduce them. But I don't know, I would have loved to see more of the actual villain. I love villains, and I feel like the villain is an integral part to a comic book, so it means that they're going to fight a worthy adversary later on, you know? So this one was okay. I mean, I'm going to continue reading it. It just wasn't as emotionally strong as the first one. So I'm going to give this one just a solid B. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I love the artwork. It just wasn't as strong as that first issue. Green Lantern, this is issue 15, 40-page comic for the price of $5. Written by Jeremy Adams. The art is done by Fernando Pasarin. The artwork looks good, man. I loved it, especially like this opening page here, as we get to see Hal Jordan going to fly like Batman's Batwing or whatever the heck this thing is called, right? And it's not like your normal Batwing. It's one that kind of has some issues. It can explode in like mid-air if you go too fast. It was like actually hilarious. But going back to the artwork, really good stuff here. We wind up getting to see Carol Ferris be a hero, which is awesome. We get to see Dove, which I don't think we've seen her. We've wound up getting to see Sorrow in this comic too, which I think he is a great core character. And the whole thing about this story is about Hal Jordan trying to recharge his power ring, right? And he's teaming up with Flash in this issue. And the whole adventure to get to this base, the Gamora Island base or whatnot, was awesome. How he takes out all these characters. He's doing battle against, what is it, Major Payne, I think that guy's name is. And there's just so many elements of this comic that was right? Excuse me, trying not to cough. But what makes this book really good is that I talked about the Absolute Power Task Force 7 books, right? This is the book that ties into that, and it really enhances the story there. So it's like, if you want to see how this Amazo robot was created and how it took Alan Scott's powers, like, you read that and you see how this robot now has a way of making a decision to do what's right from wrong. You get to read this issue, like, it continued. It doesn't just end at that Absolute Power tie-in. So it continues from here. And Carol Ferris' story is really good, and how she comes across Sorrow for the first time and how she's beside herself with that. It's just all around just makes a really fun, emotional, action-packed, great comic book. This one is an A+ for me. Top pick, highly recommended. Even when it's tied to an event, Jeremy Adams writes a great comic book. I had so much fun with this one. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is issue 2. It's a 28-page comic for the price of $5, written by Jason Aaron. The art is done by Raphael Albuquerque. The artwork is really good in this comic book. I love the way Michelangelo looks. It is focused around Michelangelo. And this is a great page right here as he reminisces about his brothers with a simpler time, hanging out in the lair, eating some pizza, right? So it isn't until issue 2 where you realize that this book is right now focusing on each individual turtle to figure out what's going on with them, right? So in the free comic book day issue, you wind up getting to see what's going on with Donatello. For issue 1, you wind up getting to see what's going on with Raphael, and in this issue, you wind up getting to see what's with Michelangelo. He's abandoned his brothers, he's no longer with his brothers, and he's kind of taken off to Tokyo. And he's become like this action star, and he is well regarded here, and he's living a great life, and he makes lots of money. But at the same time, he's kind of gone soft. He doesn't eat the normal pizza. It's like frozen, and he just hangs out in his apartment all day. And then all of a sudden, we wind up seeing him getting attacked by these ninja warriors that like light up and blind you, and they poisoned his pizza. And how does he get out of this situation? Well, you'll have to read the rest to find out. But this was a really good book. I quite enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the direction of this comic. It's a great read. And so for a person that hasn't really enjoyed Turtles all that much over the years, I think, like I said, this has some promise. I'm going to give this one an A. I want to see where it goes from here and how the Turtles get back together and what their overall grand scheme of things actually is. Transformers issue 12, the conclusion to the second story arc. This is written by Daniel Warren Johnson. The art is done by Jorge Corona. The color artist here is Mike Spicer. I gotta give him credit. The coloring in this is great as well. And it's hard to believe that you can get every single issue of a series be as good as it's been. It's so nice to see that. You always get these dips, this roller coaster effect when it comes to certain comics, but Transformers has been consistently great. Not just good, but great. And this is the climactic conclusion to the second story arc, and man oh man does this book deliver from the very first page to the very last page. You got Soundwave in here, you got Cliff Jumper trying to get rescued, you got the Autobots, battling the Decepticons in order to save Earth, because Cybertron is just about to take Earth's spot. And in this issue, you wind up getting to see Optimus Prime be the hero that he needs to be. He needs to make a huge decision here. Does he save Earth or does he save his home world, right? And when you talk about emotion, like, look at that. That is emotion right there from a freaking robot, okay? So that's why Jorge Corona's artwork is so well done in this comic book. And I'm sad to see him go, but we are getting the new artist in this one, and I think it's Jason Howard. I think is the newest artist on the next one. Yeah, it's Jason Artist. So let me know what you think about him taking over. But nevertheless, really great. And again, Optimus is forced to make a tough decision. Now, this is a spoiler, but Optimus does apparently destroy or kill Shockwave in this moment. Now, it looks like something possessed him here, because when you see him do this, his eyes turned purple. Now, why did that happen? If you guys have any idea, let me know in the comments section below, because it just looked like he did not have control of himself when he did this. So I felt like this was an integral part of the story that I possibly missed, right? But overall, an absolutely phenomenal story. Beachcomber makes his appearance in here. He has like a Silver Surfer moment. I thought that was so freaking awesome. It's such a freaking good book. Top pick once again. Another A+ book for me. And he's on this bad boy for issue 24, and I'm going to enjoy another year of Transformers. Geiger, this is issue 6, guys. This book is so good as well. 32 pages for the price of $4. It's written by Jeff Johns, and the art is done by Gary Frank. Listen, when it comes to this book, what can I say? I mean, the artwork looks great. We get introduced to more types of animals, and in fact, this animal right here, his name is Zigzag, and I'll tell you more about him in a little bit. But this is another one of those animal books where it's just like, it kind of pulls at the heartstrings, man. You wind up getting to see Barney, who is the two-headed dog, who is kind of suffering a little bit of some PTSD based off of what happened in the last issue with the electrician, on how he wound up getting captured. And it's like, at first he was all by himself. He didn't want to eat. He's recovering from his scars, and he just needed time to think, right? And so he comes to this and he comes to Zigzag, and then they leads him to a zoo, and then you find out that there's these poachers that capture these mutant animals and try to make money. And we wind up seeing a tough fight for survival when it comes to these animals. And I love how Barney was the hero in this comic book. This is a great standalone issue, right? And you wind up seeing all the animals come together and save the day and stop these poachers from, taking any of the animals. But the great thing on this comic book was you wind up seeing Barney come back home, and he brings back Zigzag, right? And the scene was so adorable. He's like, Mr. Geiger, can I take him? And he's like, no, I'm not taking another mouth to feed. He's like, his name is Zigzag. That's what you are. This is done. I'm taking him. And so now they have a larger family. They got the dog. They got the zebra. They got everything there. And it was just really good, man. It's just like, again, this book is finding, lighthearted moments. It's discovering light in a very dark situation, and it puts a smile in your face, and I really enjoy it. This book is a must read, man. This is awesome. Another top pick for me, another A+ book. These books are separating themselves from the rest of the pack when it comes to Geiger and Transformers, Green Lantern. For me, it's just, they're so well written, and I absolutely love them. Check out Geiger, guys. I don't think you'll be disappointed with it. So there you guys have it. I know this one was a little bit late, and I've been sick, and I'm trying to fight through it so I can get this video for you. If you like it, you know what to do. Give it a thumbs up. If you love my content, there's more content right here for you to click on. Did you guys know that I'm thinking about bringing back top 10 comic book covers of the week? Yeah, if you haven't checked it out, go ahead, click on that one. And as always, guys, remember, support the local comic shops. Keep buying, keep collecting, but always remember, read your comics so we can have great comic conversation. Guys, thank you so much. I'll see you real soon. Bye.